Today, I'm counting down the top 10 greatest online role-playing games of all time and taking a look at their most infamous expansions. Expansions are what keep these games alive and evolving, but sometimes things just don't go as planned. So let's break down where these legendary games stumbled and why as I count down from number 10 to number 1. Starting off, number 10, Runescape. This classic has had a ton of expansions, but Menopause really missed the mark. It was grind heavy and didn't have the endgame content players expected. Sure, it opened up a new area and storyline, but the grind to unlock the city's perks became repetitive, making it feel like a chore rather than an adventure. One player summed it up perfectly, saying, "The reputation grind was just tedious, and the rewards didn't feel worth the effort." And while Menopause tops the list of disappointments, the Lost Grove also fell short. It added a few interesting challenges, but didn't offer nearly as much to explore. At number 9, Rift. Back in the day, Rift was a strong competitor in the online role-playing scene, but Starfall Prophecy was where things started to go downhill. Players faced bug after bug, and this expansion lacked the creativity and polish that had made Rift a fan favorite. Many felt it was the beginning of the end for the game's strong run. As one review put it, Starfall Prophecy had great potential, but its lack of polish and technical issues held it back. And while Starfall Prophecy takes the crown here, Nightmare Tide also left players feeling underwhelmed. Its underwater zones were unique, but the complex mechanics just didn't click for most players. At number 8, we've got EverQuest II. This game has seen over 16 expansions, but the Shadow Odyssey stands out for all the wrong reasons. With reused assets and uninspired content, it felt like a step back, as though it was simply recycled material instead of something fresh and new. One player described it by saying, "The Shadow Odyssey felt like a rehash of old content with little innovation." And for those who found the Shadow Odyssey disappointing, Chains of Eternity didn't leave a strong impression either. It added content, but didn't quite hook players the way other expansions had. Number 7, EverQuest, the granddaddy of online role-playing games, with over 25 expansions. But the Legacy of Yakusha felt more like a patch than a true expansion. Sure, it introduced Froglocks, the frog people, and some quality of life improvements, but it just didn't have the depth players expected from an EverQuest expansion. One veteran player even commented, "Legacy of Yakusha was underwhelming. It didn't offer much beyond a new playable race." And for those who thought the Legacy of Yakusha was a low point, Gates of Discord also had its share of frustrations. Though ambitious, it launched with brutal difficulty and bugs that turned players off. Coming in at number 6, we've got The Lord of the Rings Online. This game's expansions are packed with lore, but Siege of Mirkwood felt like it should have been a content patch instead of a full expansion. It continued the story, but didn't add much to explore or keep players engaged. As one fan noted, Siege of Mirkwood was disappointingly short and lacked substantial content. And while Siege of Mirkwood was the weakest, War of Three Peaks didn't do much better. This expansion had limited content, but it was marketed as a major release, which left fans feeling let down. Number 5, Star Wars Old Republic. Galactic Starfighter sounded awesome on paper. Space combat and the Star Wars universe, right? But in reality, it quickly became repetitive, and the whole thing felt disconnected from the main storyline. Fans looking for more story-driven content weren't thrilled with this side expansion. As one player said, Galactic Starfighter felt like a separate game. It didn't integrate well with the main experience, and for players who felt Galactic Starfighter fell flat, Knights of the Eternal Throne wasn't their favorite either. It focused too heavily on solo content, which alienated fans who loved the group play aspect of the game. Number 4, Guild Wars 2. Known for its storytelling and open world design, Guild Wars 2 faced serious criticism with Heart of Thorns. This expansion brought gliding and elite specializations, but the steep difficulty and grind-heavy progression frustrated casual players. It was ambitious, but maybe too ambitious for its own good. One player put it bluntly, Heart of Thorns was too grindy, and the difficulty spike was discouraging. And if Heart of Thorns wasn't quite your thing, Path of Fire also had its drawbacks. Although it was generally better received, it had some balance issues, and some players found the endgame content lacking. At number 3, we have The Elder Scrolls Online. This game has taken players all over Tamriel, but Murkmire didn't quite live up to the hype. It felt like a minor downloadable content add-on than a full expansion, and fans were hoping for more lore and exploration. As one player remarked, Murkmire was underwhelming. It felt more like a downloadable add-on than a true expansion. And if Murkmire left you disappointed, Orsinium also had mixed reviews. While its story was praised, it didn't offer quite the same level of content as bigger expansions like Morrowind or Somerset. Coming in at number 2, Final Fantasy XIV. Now, this online role-playing game is famous for one of the greatest comeback stories in gaming, but even Final Fantasy XIV had a low point with Stormblood. This expansion wasn't a disaster, but it struggled with pacing and didn't quite hit as hard as Heaven's Ward or Shadowbringers. Players loved the new jobs, Red Mage and Samurai, but overall Overall, Stormblood just didn't reach the high bar Final Fantasy XIV is known for. One fan summed it up, saying Stormblood's story felt disjointed and the zones were less engaging. And while Stormblood takes the cake for the weakest expansion, Heaven's Ward also had a shaky start before finding its stride later on. And finally, number 1, we have the juggernaut of all online role-playing games, World of Warcraft. Honestly, I thought the worst expansion would be Mists of Pandaria. I mean, come on, it's the one with the pandas, right? But nope, the expansion that drew the most criticism was actually Warlords of Draenor. Warlords of Draenor started strong with a cool storyline and garrisons, but it quickly fizzled out. Players found themselves stuck in their garrisons, isolated from the game world, and the severe content drought left fans frustrated. With cut features and a lack of updates, it just couldn't keep players engaged. One player expressed it best, saying, Warlords of Draenor had potential, but ended up being a content drought with lackluster features. And while Warlords of Draenor sits at the bottom, Battle for Azeroth didn't fare much better. Despite an interesting premise with faction wars and war fronts, the Azerite gear system was confusing, and the endgame content just didn't deliver. Expansions can make or break an online game. While these titles have given me years of adventure, even the greatest games stumble sometimes. So what do you think? Did I miss an expansion that deserves a spot here? Let me know in the comments below.